Picasso would get for something like that of $15,000 to $20,000. I would sell it for less. I never offered a painting or a drawing to a museum who didn't buy it. That never refused one. Never.
What is genuine and what is fake? A question which has been asked since art began. A large seizure of oil paintings and drawings in 1968 by the French state uncovered one of the largest art scandals of the century. Who was this forger, whose brushstroke was so clever that he was at times confused with the greatest of artists?
I'm going to paint now. I'm going to make a painting by Matisse. But you have to give me a little time, yeah?
The forger's name? Elmyr de Hory. Seen here in an old film from the BBC's archive. Elmyr, the man labelled as the greatest art forger of our generation. It has been claimed that he not only managed to fool the art world over a period of 20 years, but that he also sold fakes for countless millions of dollars. Is it true that museums, galleries, art historians and collectors all over the world were tricked by his paintings? And if so, where are these forgeries now? Who fooled who? What is the truth and what is the myth?
He was he had an incredible personality, incredible, very, very smart.
He built the ideal family and the ideal story of himself.
Yes, Elmyr was a big actor. It could be a very, very good actor, yes.
He knew everybody on the island that was anybody, and he had friends all over the world who used to come and see him.
He had an endless capacity to sort of revive himself.
Yeah, he was a mystery. He certainly was a mystery. Yes.
But for a while, I thought it a possibility that he had faked his own death. And I tried my best to find someone who had seen the corpse. And you know, I never did.
We begin our search into this man's elaborate life and works on the Mediterranean island of Ibiza, where Elmyr spent the last years of his life. It was here he had his base and held his court. This Spanish island in the 1960s and 70s had become the center for the international jet set, rich hippies, and also for many of the world's known and unknown artists. Café Montesol was, in the 1970s, the in place. It was where Elmyr drank his daily morning cup of coffee and where he kept himself updated with the island's latest news. Elmyr de Hory was also known as Hoffman, Doribotin, Cassou, Reynal and Herzog. This colourful catalogue is from an exhibition of Elmyr's forgeries held in Tokyo in 1994. Matisse, Picasso, Modigliani, Renoir, Van Gogh and Van Dongen. Could these forgeries once have been sold as authentic works of art? Let's start by travelling to Paris and meeting our most important source, Clifford Irving, author of the book Fake, Elmyr de Hory's official biography.
You're not...
But the problem with our source is, how reliable is he? Irving is the same man who tried to publish the fabricated biography of the multimillionaire Howard Hughes, and who also made the cover of Time magazine as the 1972 Swindler of the Year. And who was it who painted that picture? That's right, our man Elmyr. To do a Clifford Irving is a term used nowadays to describe writing a false biography. Clifford and Elmyr, two artists in their own fields, one a writer, the other a painter, both revealed as swindlers, two good friends. We're on the trail, but of what?
One of the good things about Elmyr is that he was not evil. There was nothing nasty or vicious about him. He had a vicious tongue when he wanted to, when he didn't like you. But other than that, unlike the Le Gros and Lessard, he was not vicious. He wasn't. He only wanted to get by and spin this dream.
Mallorca, Chopin, Ibiza, Elmyr.
The reason we became good friends is that I needed money at the time, and I borrowed money from him, $50, or the equivalent in pesetas. And I went to Elmyr and paid him back. And he said, "You're paying me back?" I said, "Yes." And tears came to his eyes. He said, "That's the first time anyone has ever repaid a loan to me on the island of Ibiza." And that's when we became friends. And then on, he trusted me.
How did Elmyr become a painter? We know that he studied at an art academy in Munich, but it was here in Paris where he received his most important impulses. At the Académie Le Grand Chimère, Elmyr painted under the most prominent living artists during the 1930s, Matisse, Picasso, Leger, and Vlaminck. Paris was the center of the art world. This was where new styles of art were born, where authors, painters, and intellectuals from the whole world gathered. Elmyr tried to live off his own creativity as an artist for many years, but this brought him neither fame nor fortune. And it was the desire for the good life, if anything, that influenced him to make his choice.
A titled Englishwoman walked in one day to my room, and she saw on the wall, pinned on the wall, a drawing. I say, "Hey, where you got that Picasso?" I say, "Well, do you think it's a Picasso?" I say, "Well, I know enough about Picasso to know whether it's a Picasso or not." I say, "Fine." He said, "Would you sell it?" I say, "Well, delighted." It assured my living for the next month or 2 months, you know. I would like to see that poor Hungarian refugee who would have resisted of that temptation.
To be a great artist, or even a very fine artist, you have to be focused on that. It has to be the central core of your life. That was not true with Elmyr. The central core of his life were beautiful young men and pretense, and the life of a boulevardier. He loved to sit at the cafe tables talking to people and then have wonderful parties. Artists are not like that. They go to some of those parties so they can meet people to whom they can sell their paintings. They don't give the parties, and he did.
Clifford Irving's statement is interesting, but also highly personal. We need to search for some new leads. Here is a picture of a young man. In film taken from the BBC's archive, we can see the very same young man appear discreetly together with Elmyr. His name is Mark Forgy, Elmyr's friend and former flatmate in Ibiza from 1970 to 76. Mark lives alone now, in a house filled with mementos of Elmyr de Hory. His lifestyle is withdrawn, and during the night he works as a security guard. Mark is friendly and tells us that we are the first ones who are interested in hearing about his life with Elmyr.
And yes, I do have quite a number of interesting stories. Where would you like to begin?
Mark, come here. I want to show you. These are the drawings I made during the time I was in prison.
In many respects, he was more of a father to me than my own father. And in that, I mean that at a very early age in my life, because I met him when I was just barely 20, he took me under his wing, so to speak, and began to give me a well-rounded education that no university could have given me. The reason Elmyr was able to succeed so well at what he did for so many years was because he was not a copyist. And that's a very important distinction that must be made. He did not copy particular paintings. What he did was to imitate the style of that particular artist.
Mark makes the same assertions that we have heard before, but he is unable to provide us with any evidence.
I think one of the questions that frequently comes up when talking about Elmyr is that I think people in the art community, museum directors and so forth, would be interested to really know how much of his work really filtered into the art market. I'm thoroughly convinced that a great many Elmyrs are still extant and exist in legitimate collections of museums and private collections throughout the world. And those are works that are under the names of Matisse and Modigliani and Picasso and all of the great 20th century artists.
This leaves us with only one choice: to keep on following Elmyr's trail. Stockholm. Let's look at a claim Elmyr made himself about something that happened in 1947.
I sold 5 drawings to a big gallery called the United or International Gallery in Stockholm.
After arriving in Stockholm, he checked into the Grand Hotel. He had with him 5 forged Picasso drawings, which he is said to have sold for $6,000. Elmyr said one of the experts who studied the drawings was employed by the National Museum. The museum's collection still contains a number of drawings by Picasso. In the 1970s, a question about one of the work's authenticity was raised. A Stockholm newspaper reported the possibility that it might have been drawn by Elmyr. However, there are a number of factors which make such a claim highly unlikely. Among them, the evidence that shows the museum's drawings were bought in 1945, 2 years before Elmyr paid his visit. There is also the price that Elmyr said he received for the drawings does not correspond with the market price for drawings by Picasso at the time. So where are the so-called Elmyr forgeries of Picasso? Hanging on the walls of some naive Swedish art lover? Or in another museum's collection? Or was the trip to Stockholm just another fabrication?
The money I got somewhere around between $5,000 and $10,000 just for drawings. I took a one-way ticket to South America.
We won't follow Elmyr to South America. only content ourselves with some stock shots and an old picture. Nothing illegal is supposed to have happened while he was there, according to Elmyr, that is.
Somehow I got tired of Rio. I went to United States, and stop.
Clifford Irving says it was here in New York that it really started. At first, Elmyr tried selling his own pictures through the Lilienfeld Gallery, but the exhibition was a fiasco. Bad critics and no sales, so Elmyr returned to forgery once more. He drew simple line drawings using a pen or pencil and signed them Picasso. But it is not enough for a forger to imitate an artist's style and signature. The materials also have to be authentic. He combed through the second-hand bookshops on 4th Avenue and found what he was looking for. Old French art books that had blank white pages with the characteristic watermark. His first American victim was the New York branch of the Pearls Galleries, where, according to Irving, he sold a Picasso drawing. We contacted Pearls before traveling to New York. Our pleasant conversation was very quickly cut short when we began to talk about Elmyr de Hory. No comments. When we visited Pearls a few months later, the gallery had been closed down. Elmyr soon discovered there were greater challenges and more money in forging oil paintings. Business must have been good, as he was able to maintain an elegant lifestyle at the Waldorf Astoria. But did he paint there? No. He rented a cheap, tiny room at the YMCA. Elmyr didn't want to stain the expensive carpets at the Waldorf with his paints. Forging Modigliani works now became his favorite occupation, and he was apparently paid $6,000 for one by the Niveau Gallery. But the gallery no longer exists, and the story is unable to be confirmed. Irving lists several museums and collections in the United States in his book that were apparently swindled by de Hory, including the William Rockhill Nelson Gallery of Art and the Atkins Museum of Fine Art in Kansas, the Detroit Art Museum, the Chicago Art Institute, the Fogg Art Museum in Boston, and the Museum of Modern Art in New York. The Museum of Modern Art is definitely not closed, but was it possible to get them to talk about Elmyr? Pleasant faces turned into stony silence. Clifford Irving had the same experience when working on his research for Elmyr's biography. He tells us about some of the typical answers from the various museum directors and gallery owners.
No. You'd be wasting your time coming here, they said, to talk to us. We have nothing to tell you.
Elmyr always said that. If a painting or drawing hangs in an established collection long enough, it becomes real. And this is a good illustration of that.
Are we unable to persuade the experts to talk, to get them to confirm that Elmyr's forgeries were, and still are, in circulation? We were about to give up when we had a breakthrough. The Fogg Art Museum in Boston. the museum which had been swindled by Elmyr in the 1950s. After a lot of oohing and aahing, they finally gave us access to the case. In the Fog archives, we searched through the correspondence between Elmyr, alias Mr. A. Renal, and the then curator, Agnes Mongan. The letters show that the Fog Museum bought a Matisse drawing from Mr. Renal in 1955, young woman with flowers and pomegranate. Suspicion arose later when the same Mr. Renal offered the museum 2 new drawings, one by Modigliani and another by Renoir. These were of such poor artistic quality that the picture that they had purchased earlier by Matisse was now examined more closely. The conclusion being, the drawing was an Elmyr Matisse. At last we had achieved our breakthrough and had an answer to our most important question. Elmyr had clearly managed to swindle a prominent university museum in the United States, at least for a while, and finally we were able to look at a genuine Elmyr forgery.
A point, I don't copy painters. I paint in a certain style. It could be in the style of Matisse, or in the style of Modigliani, the style of Picasso.
How could a recognized university museum be swindled by the forger Elmyr de Hory? We put this question to the present curator at the Fog, Mr. William Robinson.
When speaking about forgeries, Agnes Mongan was always fond of saying, the life of a forgery is 1 generation. Looking at a de Hory drawing 30 years later certainly reveals to us the stylistic characteristics of the 1950s that were in de Hory's own style. In retrospect, and with the knowledge that they are forgeries, we can easily recognize the weaknesses in de Hory's work, the lines that don't describe volume, the emphasis on the decorative and superficial characteristics of Matisse's line.
Matisse drawings line were never that sure as mine. He was hesitant when he made a drawing, you know.
These are qualities that instantly reveal themselves to us now, and but were evidently less apparent to those who consider the drawings in the 1950s.
In 1955, the museum printed a Matisse postcard. When he was shown to be by Elmyr de Hory, the card was quickly withdrawn and the stock destroyed. We asked Mr. Robinson if he believed that any of Elmyr's fakes were still hanging on the walls of museums and art galleries.
I am sure that other museums hold works by de Hory. I don't know of specific instances that I could cite.
We'll take Mr. Robinson's word for it, before following an interesting trail that leads us to the Henni Onstad Art Center, situated on the outskirts of Oslo. In his biography, The Great Swindler, Fernand Legros claims that Sonia Henni was one of his best customers. Are there any fakes to be found in this collection?
Well, it could be false paintings in this collection.
After doing some cross-checking, we discovered that one of the collection's pictures was bought from a gallery that is known to have sold a number of Elmyr's fakes.
Could you show me the painting from the catalogue, please? Because I can't...
We point the picture out to the curator, Mr. Irving Storm-Björke, before asking him to tell us about it.
That one, yeah. This is one of the paintings we are going to investigate, yes. It's a quite well-known painting. It has been in several mural exhibitions and have never been questioned. But according to your information, we are forced to question this painting and will investigate it, yes.
Let's leave the Henni Onstad Center to conduct its own investigations and turn our attention back to Elmyr. For the next 12 years, Elmyr de Hory crossed the length and breadth of the United States, during which time he used a number of pseudonyms. such as E. Reynal, Louis Cassou, Elmyr Hoffman, and Baron Herzog. The owner of the Niveau Galleries in New York, who Elmyr had swindled earlier, once said, "De Hory has talent, but the real swindler is Elmyr Reynal." However, exotic names were not enough, so he began to develop his techniques for forgery. Not only did the artistic expression have to convince the customer, but the pictures also had to be painted on authentic French canvases with French stretchers, if the product was to appear French. Imitating the age of the fake was also necessary if it was to appear to be from the correct period. Elmyr employed carpenters to replicate French stretchers, which he himself had patinated. On the back he glued a new canvas over the one that was already painted. This method, known as relining, is a technique used for restoring pictures which have been damaged or become worn through age. Another cunning technique he used involved forging art books containing folio illustrations. Elmyr replaced the photograph of the original painting shown in the book with one he had taken of his own fake. Selling a forged Modigliani or Duffy now became a lot easier when he was able to show the customers his pictures in recognized art books. After he left the United States, Elmyr returned to Europe and the Mediterranean island of Ibiza, where we once again pick up his trail. Before we delve into the dramatic years in Ibiza, the scandals, the exposure and the tragic end, let us try and get a clearer impression of Elmyr. One thing that we're almost certain about, Elmyr de Hory was Hungarian. Of others we are less certain, such as the date of his birth, 1911, which is written on his gravestone. His claim to be of aristocratic descent, and that his father was a diplomat and a member of the landed gentry by Lake Balaton. Mark told us some of the tales which Elmyr had made up, but also added,
Elmyr portrayed a childhood that was bourgeois, comfortable, and I have no reason to disbelieve that from some of the early family photos that I possess of him. It would show that his mother and his aunt, and for example, they were very elegant people of probably a high bourgeoisie.
Living close to Café Montesol is retired estate agent Henni Onstad, a former close friend of both Mark and Elmyr. Did Elmyr tell her anything about his background?
He was very secret about his family, and when he talked about his family, I know it wasn't the truth.
No, absolutely not. Never. Not really. Or, no.
Another close friend, Sandy Pratt, used to run a bar where Elmyr and his innermost circle regularly met.
Could you hand me the specs which are in there? Don't forget that to all of us, you know, Western Europeans, English, Irish, Spanish, French, that world, the world of Hungary, you know, because of the war, and since the Iron Curtain had come clattering down, to us, you know, we knew nothing about it at all.
I know only what Elmyr told me, which was always a fairy tale of Mama coming down this grand staircase wearing a gown for a ball where the Countess of such and such was going to be there and the Duke of so-and-so, and Elmyr would be crying at the bottom of the stairs because Mama was leaving him alone yet another night. That was the version of his childhood that he told most of us.
In Budapest, we begin at the National Archive to see if we can track down Elmyr and his family. But we are unable to find any trace of a diplomat or member of the landed gentry which matches one of Elmyr's many surnames, Hory, Hoffman or Herzog. At the age of 16 or 17, Elmyr is said to have attended an art school here. At the time, there was only one such school in Budapest. It is still running, and so we went to visit it. A thorough search of the records revealed the interesting fact that a pupil called Elmyr de Hory had attended the school in 1922 to 1923. The principal insists that this must be our man. TH in Hungarian is the same as de in French. Elmyr quite simply changed the TH with a DE and formed the name de Hory. According to the school's ledgers, Elmyr was born in 1905 and not 1911 as stated on his gravestone. So another forgery by Elmyr is brought to light. It also confirms Mark's statement that Elmyr liked pretending he was younger than he actually was. The records also show that he was a Calvinist. We discovered the date Elmyr was christened and his parents' name and address, number 20 Barrow Street. Could anyone with the name Hory still be living here? No. No one knows anybody by that name. Neither is there anything noble about this part of town, the place where Elmyr probably grew up at the turn of the century. It is a middle-class area, without a trace of Hungarian aristocracy. We return to Ibiza and talk to Elmyr's old friends in order to continue our search. Vincent Rebus's home has a view over the main street and Café Montesol. He is a prominent lawyer, knows everyone who is worth knowing in Ibiza, and was a central figure in Elmyr's circle of friends.
In one day and one dinner, I saw the house plenty of beautiful pictures and photos of beautiful ladies with big heads and very elegant, like from Ascot, you know. And I said, "What are all these ladies?" He said, "It's my mother." And said, "How many mothers did you have?"
So who are we to believe? Some say this is a picture of Elmyr together with his older brother, while Elmyr told everyone it was his cousin.
Who can tell? How to tell?
Former James Bond girl Ursula Andress, actress and sex symbol of the 1960s and 70s, was another of Elmyr's many friends from Ibiza's international jet set.
Yes, I had just seen as a guest a very dear old friend of mine, Ursula Andress, and I tried to talk her into it to stay here because I think we two together would have been most perfect Beauty and the Beast.
I'm very drawn to people who are full of imagination, full of life, full of talent, full of stories. He was had an incredible personality, incredible. I see him so clear in front of me always. I see him with the white hair, with the big brown eyes, and having the rings and the chains and his basket, where he had everything in his basket. It was like a magic basket he had, always with him.
Ibiza is Elmyr's stage. In the open, he has the island society in the palm of his hands, while he paints in secret. There is no one to equal him. Business is good, and in contrast to his time in the United States, others have now taken over the responsibility for selling his pictures. Relinquishing control into their hands, however, increases the risk that something might go wrong and could ultimately lead to his downfall.
He did not have any true insight into human nature, and that's what left him open and vulnerable to the exploitation of others. He could not really judge people.
French Egyptian and US passport holder Fernand Legros, a sales genius, a man whom Elmyr met in the United States and whom he educated in the history of art and etiquette. Legros, a man renowned for his expensive taste, silk suits, expensive jewelry, exclusive cars, and young men. French-Canadian Réal Lessard, Legros' lover and business partner. It was these two men who took over and now administered Elmyr's production. Réal Lessard and Fernand Legros.
He was the expert at selling. They needed a place to keep these paintings. They brought a lot of paintings to England, and England was an easy place to fly into. Spain was always difficult, but England was easy. I lived near the airport. They used to fly in, pick up a few paintings, fly out somewhere, give me a little bit of incentive to keep them, and so that's how I got some of these paintings.
Just outside London, we meet Anthony Hugo in another apartment filled with pictures by Elmyr, a former smuggler who during Franco's reign captained a boat which trafficked contraband between Gibraltar and Spain. Today he describes his occupation as an artist's agent. He knew Elmyr well and was an important business partner of Lessard and Legros. Paris, Boulevard Henri Martin, 89. A royal apartment formerly owned by King Hassan of Morocco. Legros and Lessard based themselves here. They often threw glamorous high society parties, which were regularly attended by a number of leading French social figures. Parties which were in all probability financed by the profits from Elmyr's pictures. Their expensive lifestyle implies that it was Lessard and Legros that kept most of the money, leaving Elmyr with only a fraction.
Poor Elmyr got very little out of it. They kept him on a string. They bought him a car, they built him a house, which in the end wasn't his, and they paid him a small retainer. But he never earned the big money that they said. He was always chasing them for money.
No, he wasn't a businessman. And so that's why he was easily taken advantage of, again and again.
Elmyr had some crazy idea that if he did the paintings but didn't do the fake signature, then he hadn't done anything wrong. He hadn't committed a crime of anything. So Réal said, well, if you're too weak-kneed to do the signatures, don't worry about it, I'll do them. And he did.
I remember Elmyr always, oh, no, I never ever sign one of those. I do not sign. It's all the galleries who do that to make more money.
In order to sell the fakes, certificates of authenticity had to be obtained. Legros and Lessard had connections with art experts, who for cash payments supplied them with the necessary documents. And in the case of Elmyr's Kees van Dongen's forgery, Woman with a Necklace, The two men visited the very old and near-sighted Van Dongen and persuaded him to write a certificate of authenticity, as Elmyr's picture looked suspiciously like his own. These were just some of their methods.
They also had and found a French government official who was what the French government called an art expert. And this guy also was down on his luck. He was an old man and they bribed him. And this man supplied many certificates for paintings they sold in South America, Australia, Japan, and America.
In the 1960s, Alger Hertel Meadows, who owned the General American Oil Company, built up an impressive collection of post-impressionist paintings, many of which had been bought from Le Gros. An art expert examined Mr. Meadows' collection in 1967 and quickly verified that 40 of the 60 or so paintings were fakes, painted by Elmyr de Hory. This formed the basis for the trial.
One day, one very special day, everything exploded around me.
Elmyr phoned me up and said, right, he said, all the paintings you got, burn them. Burn everything, destroy everything. I don't want nothing left. I said, why? Don't ask questions. Just please, please, you're a friend of mine, do this thing for me. Of course, I looked at these fantastic works of art, and only a madman would have burnt them. So I hid them away. Le Gros was on the run. He went to Switzerland. He got arrested in Switzerland, and the same with Réal Lissard.
Mariano Jobait said to me, oh, Interpol is here also, Interpol is here. Go up to the house, see that all the paintings are, right, correct. He said looking for paintings that he signed or something like that.
Everybody said, that's incredible. Our Elmyr, our dear friend Elmyr, now makes all this big scandal. This is out of our mind. But at the same time, we accept and we think that it's more Elmyr than before. This is a great success.
It could be described as scandalous success that France, where the trial was due to be held, had no extradition treaty with Spain, and a shocked Elmyr was not only able to continue living in Ibiza, he was also able to bask in his newfound fame. At one of Elmyr's parties, both he and Clifford Irving lavishly amused themselves over the newspaper reports.
A man who holds the art world to ransom.
Holds the art world to ransom.
And you went to parties and the rooms would be full of people, and the one word you could hear was Elmyr, 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 Elmyr. It was like a buzz. And so that was lots of fun, yes.
Elmyr was in his glory. He was a snob at heart, and when it came to high society, he couldn't get enough. But he was lovable.
It is ironic that Elmyr now sold more than ever before. People still wanted to own a Picasso, Matisse, and Modigliani, but now they wanted them in the style of signed Elmyr. And Elmyr Matisse now became worth a lot of money in its own right, due to his new celebrity status as a forger. And as long as he signed his paintings with his own name, he was not breaking the law.
Life still had its biting irony. He was able to make a good living, live very comfortably from the sale of his works, but they didn't want Elmyrs by Elmyr. They wanted Elmyr Picassos, Elmyr Modiglianis, Elmyr Matisses, and so forth.
The seizures and the extent of Elmyr's activities as a swindler were enormous, and encouraged the French and Spanish authorities to cooperate in bringing about his extradition, so that he could finally be brought to trial. In 1976, Elmyr's future began to look very bleak indeed.
Elmyr didn't know exactly what his situation was going to be with the extradition demands.
He was thinking to buy, and he bought some fake passport to go to somewhere in America, in South America.
I knew that Elmyr had 2 false passports. And when I made inquiry at the town hall about what effects had been found, the passports were not found there. So what happened to his passports?
He said to me, Ursula, if the extradition Spain will accept it, I will kill myself. I will never ever go to France, because I don't want to be killed by somebody else. Because he said, if I get there, Miss Fernando Gough with all the things, he said she will get me.
The story I heard that they were going to stage a suicide pact with him, but just at the last minute, Elmyr was going to be found, taken to the hospital. His stomach was going to be pumped, and he was going to be all right. But he was going to be so ill, there was no way that they could send him back to France.
After the trial, I was given this information that he was going to be extradited. So I went home and I gave him the news. And it was a very turbulent, very emotional period for me. And then he went up to his bedroom and proceeded to take an overdose of sleeping pills and cognac. I left the house at that time. I went into town and I met with Guillemette. I told her the news.
Please, it's something bad with Elmyr. Please come. And then I go with a friend of mine. We was 3, and we find him in his bedroom.
And I tried to rouse him, shake him, and I said, Elmyr. Well, he turned upward and looked at me, but I could tell from the expression in his eyes, the gaze was quite distant.
It was in life, I think so. I feel it was some respiration.
Henry and I then proceeded to lift him from the bed, and we were going to take him to the clinic in Ibiza. And he died in my arms.
A few years after his death, I heard from someone I know that he had been seen in Italy on the street by a woman who knew him. She saw him in a crowd nearby, and she said, Elmyr! And the person froze and ran.
This is tremendously funny. Now Elmyr is Elvis.
Even after Elmyr's death, his forgeries, as we have shown, still continue to be sold as originals.
I was recently in Tel Aviv, where there was a major exhibition of fauve art, and I was looking through the catalogue and I came across a painting which rung a bell to me. This painting was in full public exhibition for a number of weeks, and I was the first person who commented that something perhaps was amiss. And in fact this is by Elmyr, well, supposedly by Elmyr, because it appears in the book by Clifford Irving.
We still have the catalogue with us, from the large exhibition of Elmyr's forgeries held in Japan. This is a catalogue which first awoke our curiosity about Elmyr de Hory.
Paintings.
Well, the catalogue is brilliant. I mean, the outside looks wonderful, doesn't it? It looks absolutely wonderful.
No, he never copied any of these.
We took it with us to London, showed it to Sotheby's, and asked them for their comments on some of the paintings.
Well, I have to say they're not as high quality copies as I've experienced from Elmyr himself. I have to say that.
My God, what's that? Japanese Modigliani or what?
The coloration is all wrong. The balance is all wrong. Everything about them is not the sort of work that Elmyr de Hory would ever produce. He couldn't produce this.
Yeah, and certainly the Degas is not what I would expect to see from Elmyr, to be honest with you. He wasn't a bad painter. He was a gifted man.
Frankly, I don't know exactly where that falls on the sin list. I don't know if it's a crime or a joke, making fake fakes.
What they say, fact is stranger than fiction.
If there is anything to be learnt by all this, it is that as long as there is an art market, there will always be forgers. Or as the old saying goes, if fools did not go to markets, cracked pots and false swears would not be sold.